In the shadows of Palm Bay Women's Correctional Facility, justice wasn't blind. It was a carefully crafted revenge, a chilling dance of power, betrayal, and a deadly secret. A story where the victim became the executioner, and the truth was more shocking than anyone could have imagined. Get ready to enter a world where the lines between right and wrong blur, and survival demands the ultimate sacrifice. This is the story of Alina Carter, and it will leave you breathless. The Palm Bay Women's Correctional Facility was like hundreds of other prisons across America. Concrete walls, barbed wire, the unbearably bright Florida sun, and the smell of disinfectant that seemed to eat into the skin of anyone who spent more than a day there. The daily routine divided life into monotonous segments filled with repetitive activities. Wake up at 6 in the morning, breakfast at 7, work from 8 to 12, at 2 is lunch, work again until 4 afternoon, dinner and free time until lights out at 10 p.m. Day after day, week after week, year after year. One hot July day, a new prisoner arrived in this established world. Alina Carter, 29 years old, had been transferred from a women's colony in Alabama to serve the remainder of her sentence, 7 years for large-scale fraud. She stood out from the other inmates, tall, slender, with attentive brown eyes that seemed to see right through people. Her black hair was pulled back into a strict ponytail, emphasizing her chiseled cheekbones and aristocratic features. Carter, this is your cell for the next 7 years. Your cellmate is Lopez. Bedding will be issued in an hour. Don't break the rules, and you might live to see the end of your sentence. Alina nodded silently, entered the cell, and placed a thin bag with her personal belongings on the lower bunk. Top bunk. Maria Lopez, a Latina woman with a wary expression, leaned against the cell wall. She introduced herself, standing still and studying the newcomer closely. Alina Carter. Alina replied, putting her things on the top bunk. From Alabama? Maria smiled. What did you do to get transferred here to this paradise? Alina didn't answer right away. She methodically laid out her meager belongings as if getting used to her new surroundings. Let's just say I had a conflict of interest with the administration there. What about you? Distributing prescription drugs without a license. Maria shrugged. I was a nurse selling painkillers. I've already served 3 years with 2 more to go. Alina nodded. The information was useful. A former nurse could come in handy. Over the next few days, Alina settled into her new surroundings, learning the rules of the colony and observing the other inmates and staff. She learned that the warden, Warden Higgins, was considered strict but fair, that the library offered some freedom from supervision, and that the most dangerous person there was not one of the inmates, but the deputy warden, Mr. Davidson, who was known for his cruelty and unpredictability. Prisoner Carter, sir. As requested, Warden Higgins, a 44-year-old man, looked exactly as he had been described, of medium height, well-built, with attentive gray eyes and graying hair at the temples. He was sitting at a massive desk, studying a file lying in front of him. On the desk was a framed photograph of Higgins himself, a smiling woman about his age, and 2 teenagers. Have a seat, Miss Carter, Higgins said, pointing to a chair in front of his desk without looking up from the documents. I'm looking over your file. Interesting story. Alina sat down, maintaining perfect posture and a serene expression. Her gaze quickly scanned the office, noting details: diplomas on the walls, a locked safe in the corner, a desk calendar with notes. "What exactly do you find interesting, Mr. Higgins?" she asked in a calm voice. "For example, the fact that you, with your education and judging by all appearances, certain abilities, chose a life of crime," he said, turning a page in the file. "Bank fraud, identity theft, forgery. An impressive list for a young woman. Life sometimes offers limited choices, Mr. Higgins," Alina replied without looking away. "Especially when you're a woman from a small town in Alabama with big dreams and few opportunities. Your personal file also mentions disciplinary issues at your previous place of confinement." He continued. "Conflicts with staff, attempts at manipulation. I want to make one thing clear right away, Miss Carter. That kind of behavior is not tolerated at my colony. We have strict rules, and breaking them has serious consequences." "I understand." Alina allowed herself a slight smile. "I assure you, my only desire is to serve out the rest of my sentence peacefully without any unnecessary problems." Higgins studied her face, as if trying to determine the sincerity of her words. His gaze betrayed professional interest, but Alina noticed something else there, a barely perceptible glimmer of personal attention that she knew well from her dealings with men in positions of power. "Your file indicates that you have experience working in a library," he said after a pause. "Why happen to have an opening?" "It's a privileged position, Miss Carter. It offers a certain amount of freedom and excellent working conditions, but it also requires responsibility and impeccable behavior. I would be grateful for the opportunity." Alina replied, "I love books, and I'm good at working with catalogs." "All right, you'll start next week." Higgins nodded and made a note in her file. "In the meantime, please get a full medical examination. It's mandatory for all new arrivals. Dr. Wilson is expecting you this afternoon." "Thank you, Mr. Higgins," Alina said, standing up when he indicated that the meeting was over. "I won't disappoint you." Returning to her cell, Alina found Maria reading a worn novel. "How did your meeting with the big boss go?" she asked without looking up from her book. "Productive," Alina replied, sitting down on her bunk. "I got a job at the library." "Whoa, you're settling in quickly." "The library is a good place. Quiet, cool, away from the main contingent." "You've been here a long time." "Maria," Alina said in a confidential tone. "What can you tell me about Higgins?" "Higgins." Maria closed the book and lowered her voice. "He keeps the colony in order. That's true. He's not as bad as some of the others." She paused, glancing at the cell door. "He has his weaknesses. Rumor has it that he's particularly attentive to certain inmates. You know what I mean?" Alina nodded understandingly. That was exactly what she wanted to hear. After lunch, Alina was taken to the infirmary. Dr. James Wilson, a man in his early 50s with receding hair and kind, tired eyes, met her in his office, which smelled of antiseptic and old medical journals. "Miss Carter, welcome to Palm Bay," he said, pointing to a couch. "Have a seat. We need to do a standard examination and discuss your medical history." Alina sat down, watching as the doctor looked through her medical file. I see you're on antiretroviral therapy, he said, looking up from the folder. 5 years, according to the records. Yes, doctor, Alina replied calmly. I am fully aware of my condition and the treatment I need. Your blood counts from the previous colony look stable, which is very good. We will continue with the same treatment regimen. You must understand the importance of taking your medication regularly. I understand, doctor. I never miss a dose. Alina looked him straight in the eye. May I ask who else will know about my diagnosis? Patient confidentiality is maintained even in prison, Miss Carter. Your status is known to me and the medical staff directly involved in your treatment. The administration has access to medical records, but as a rule, they do not go into details unless there is a specific need to do so. Alina nodded thoughtfully. The information was important. She noted that Higgins might or might not know about her HIV status, depending on how thoroughly he had reviewed her medical records. Thank you for your honesty, doctor. I appreciate the confidentiality. After the examination, back in her living quarters, Alina pondered the information she had received. Prison Warden Higgins was exactly the type of man she needed. Powerful, but with obvious weaknesses, a family, and a reputation to destroy. A man who embodied the very system that had broken her life. 5 years ago, her life had been divided into before and after. A young, ambitious woman who had grown up in a small Alabama town, Alina had dreamed of a career as a lawyer. She studied hard, worked part-time in the evenings, and saved every penny for her education. But everything changed one evening when James Rodriguez, a well-known deputy sheriff in their community, offered her a ride home after her shift at the bar. Alina refused, but he insisted, and his persistence turned into something much more terrifying on a deserted road outside of town. 3 months later, she learned of her HIV status. Her attempt to seek justice backfired. Rodriguez had connections, and she was just a bartender with a questionable reputation, according to them. Not only was her statement rejected, but she was also threatened with defamation charges. Her life fell apart. College, career, future, everything disappeared, leaving only anger and a thirst for revenge. Alina started small, minor scams that gradually grew into more complex financial schemes. She discovered a talent for manipulation and deception. She didn't just steal money. She destroyed the lives of those she believed deserved punishment. Corrupt officials, cruel police officers, powerful men who considered themselves untouchable. And now, serving her sentence, she had found a new goal. In the evening, while most of the inmates were watching TV in the common room, Alina and Maria sat in their cell, talking in hushed voices. You said you were a nurse, Alina began. What kind of nursing? I worked in the infectious disease ward at Tampa City Hospital, Maria replied. 3 years before I got caught up in the pill business. So, you know about infectious diseases. Alina looked intently at her cellmate. What are you asking me for, Alina? Maria tensed. I need someone I can trust. Alina lowered her voice to a whisper. Someone with medical training and no unnecessary moral principles. That sounds dangerous. Maria frowned, but her eyes betrayed her curiosity. What are you up to? I have HIV, she finally said. I didn't get it by choice from a man who escaped punishment because of his position. I lost everything. My future, my career, my normal life. Now I want someone else to feel the same way. You want to deliberately infect someone. That's a criminal offense! Maria recoiled. I'm already serving time for another criminal offense, Alina replied calmly. And I chose my target very carefully, Higgins. Higgins, Maria whispered with sudden understanding. You're targeting the prison warden. He's the perfect target. Married. Has children, a position in society, a man who embodies the system that broke me. And he has a soft spot for prisoners, as you yourself said. This is madness, Alina! Even if you seduce him, and that's difficult enough, how do you plan to survive afterward? Do you think he'll just let you walk around knowing you could destroy him? I don't plan on surviving. Elena's eyes were cold and determined. I plan for my death to be the beginning of his end. I need an ally who will help complete my plan after I'm gone. Someone who can pass the evidence on to the right people. Why should I help you? It could cost me extra time. Because you're the only person here with enough medical knowledge to understand my plan, and because I can help you get out early. Alina leaned closer. I have connections on the outside, information that could be useful, and beside, don't you want to see the life of a man who thinks he can get away with abusing women in this prison come crashing down? What will happen to the man from Alabama, the one who did this to you? He'll get what's coming to him too. Alina's eyes flashed. Some of the evidence I'm going to leave behind concerns him as well. Two birds with one stone. There was a long pause. The voices of other prisoners, laughter, and the sound of the television could be heard outside the cell walls. Normal prison life continued, unaware of the plan brewing in the small cell. Okay, Maria finally said. I'll help you. Not because of your promises, but because I've seen what Higgins does to some of the girls here. How he takes advantage of his position and then sends them to solitary confinement or transfers them to other prisons if they become a problem. So, we're partners. Alina held out her hand. Partners. But we need a clear plan. Maria hesitated, then shook the outstretched hand. I have a plan. Alina allowed herself a slight smile. And it starts in the library next Monday. The library of the Palm Bay Women's Correctional Colony was a small room with rows of metal shelves filled with worn books. It was quiet and cool, the only place in the entire prison where one could hide from the heat and noise. Alina quickly settled into her new job. She organized the catalog, created a book lending system, and tidied up the shelves. Her neatness and professionalism did not go unnoticed. Miss Carter, I'm impressed, said Robert Higgins, appearing in the library doorway 2 weeks after Alina started work. Officer Johnson says you've completely transformed this place. Thank you, Mr. Higgins. Alana looked up from the book she was cataloging and smiled. I just love order. The warden walked along the shelves, running his finger along the spines of the books. What did you read before? He paused. Before you ended up here, mostly law books. Alina replied, putting the cards away. I dreamed of becoming a lawyer. What happened? His voice sounded genuinely curious. Life, Mr. Higgins. Sometimes it changes our plans in the most unexpected ways. Their eyes met, And in that moment, something arose between them. Not so much understanding as recognition. Two people whose lives had not turned out as they had planned. "You're right," he finally said. "Life rarely follows our plans." From that day on, Higgins began to visit the library regularly. At first, his visits were short and formal, checking on the work, discussing the need for new books, but gradually, these visits became longer and more personal. He asked questions about her past, about the books she read, and shared stories from his life. Alina was an attentive listener and skillfully guided the conversation, creating the illusion of deep mutual understanding. "You know, you're taming him like a wild animal," Maria remarked one evening in their cell. "I've been watching you every day, little by little, and now he's sitting in the library for hours, forgetting his duties. That's how you tame dangerous animals." Alina lay on her bunk, staring at the ceiling. She replied quietly, slowly, patiently, creating the illusion of safety. "What will happen when the beast realizes he's been fooled? Higgins isn't the type to forgive deception. By then, it will be too late," Alina said with cold determination in her voice. "The plan is progressing even faster than I expected. He's unhappy in his marriage, disappointed in his career, and looking for something to restore his sense of youth and power." "What about Dr. Wilson?" Maria asked. "Has noticed you two getting closer. I saw him watching you in the dining room." Duttra. Wilson was indeed a problem she couldn't stop thinking about. Alina frowned. During her monthly medical checkups, he had been asking more and more questions, and he looked increasingly concerned. "The doctor is bound by medical confidentiality," she finally replied. "He can't intervene directly. But you're right, he's watching. We need to be more careful." The next morning, while working in the library, Alina noticed Dr. Wilson heading toward her. She tensed inwardly but kept her expression calm. "Miss Carter," he began quietly, making sure no one was around. "I need to talk to you." "Of course, doctor," she replied, putting down her book. "Is there something wrong with my test results?" "No. Your test results are fine," he said, visibly nervous. "The thing is, I've noticed that you've been spending a lot of time with your boss, Mr. Higgins. Mr. Higgins is interested in the state of the library. It's his job." Alina remained unperturbed. "Miss Carter." Wilson lowered his voice to a whisper. "I know about your diagnosis, and I've also noticed that your relationship with Mr. Higgins is becoming more intimate. I must remind you of your responsibilities." "Responsibilities?" Alina raised an eyebrow. "Dr. Wilson, you seem to be making assumptions about the nature of my relationship with the warden." "I'm just concerned about your patient." "Or your boss," Alina interrupted, her eyes now defiant. "What exactly is bothering you, doctor?" "That a prisoner with HIV might have a relationship with a respected member of society, or that the warden might be abusing his position." "I care about the health of all people, Miss Carter, including yours." Dr. Wilson paled. "My health is under control," she replied coldly. "I take medication and get regular checkups. As for my relationship with Mr. Higgins or anyone else, that is not your professional responsibility." Wilson hesitated, clearly torn by an internal conflict. "I can't force you," he finally said. But I ask you to think about the consequences for everyone involved." After the doctor left, Alina allowed herself a moment of anxiety. Wilson was a threat to her plan, but he couldn't intervene directly. Patient confidentiality and the lack of direct evidence tied his hands. Nevertheless, she had to speed things up. That evening, as Alina was returning from the library, she was stopped by a security officer. "Carter, the boss wants to see you in his office." Now, when she entered Higgins's office, she noticed that he was unusually tense. "Close the door, Miss Carter," he said without looking at her. Alina obeyed, mentally preparing herself for a possible confrontation. Had Wilson finally decided to violate patient confidentiality? "Dagger, Wilson came to see me today," Higgins began, confirming her fears. "We had an interesting conversation." Alina remained silent, waiting for him to continue. "Expressed concern about how much time I spend in the library." Higgins finally looked up and met her gaze. "He thinks it could be misinterpreted." "And what did you say to him?" Alina asked, keeping her composure. "That I'm the warden of this prison, and I decide where and how I spend my working hours." Higgins stood up from the desk and moved closer to her. "But he made me think, Miss Carter, about what's going on between us." "What's going on between us, Mr. Higgins?" Alina let her voice soften, becoming more intimate. He was standing very close now, and she could feel his breath. "Something that shouldn't be," he replied quietly. "Something dangerous. Sometimes danger is the only thing that makes us feel alive." Alina looked him straight in the eyes. "Isn't that why you come to the library every day, to feel alive?" The moment of tension between them seemed to stretch on forever. Then Higgins did what she had been waiting for all these weeks. He leaned over and kissed her. In the days that followed, their meetings became secret and intense. Higgins found excuses to call Alina into his office late in the evening, when most of the staff had already left. Sometimes he stayed in the library after closing time, locking the door behind him. Their relationship quickly progressed from emotional intimacy to physical intimacy. Dr. Wilson watched with growing horror. During another medical examination, he made one more attempt. "Miss Carter, I must warn you. What you are doing could be considered intentional infection. That is a serious crime." "What are you talking about, doctor?" Alina feigned innocent surprise. "I'm not infecting anyone. I'm not blind," he said, his voice tinged with desperation. "I can see what's going on between you and Higgins, and I know about your diagnosis. And yet," she replied with a slight smile, "there's nothing you can do. Doctor-patient confidentiality, remember. Besides, you have no proof, only suspicions. I could talk to him directly about the risks without mentioning you specifically. Otherwise, it would be a breach of medical confidentiality, and if you breach it, I'll file a complaint." "You'll lose your license, Dr. Wilson. Is it worth it?" Alina interrupted him. Wilson looked at her with a mixture of fear and distrust. "Why are you doing this?" "We all have our own sense of justice, Doctor," Alina replied quietly. "Mine looks different from yours." That evening in her cell, Maria noticed a change in Alina's mood. "Something happened. You look happy. The plan is going even better than I expected," Alina replied. Dr. Wilson tried to interfere, but his hands were tied. And Higgins, he's completely under my control. You all ready? Maria didn't finish her question. Yes, Alina replied briefly. And not just once. We just have to wait for the virus to take hold in his body. And then it's the final act. How are you going to let him know that you infected him? Carefully, Alina sat down on the cot, lowering her voice. First hints, then facts. He has to understand that he's caught in a trap with no way out. That his life is ruined, just like mine was once ruined. What if he just kills you? Maria's voice was filled with fear. He might try, Alina agreed. But by then, I'll have evidence that will destroy him, even if I'm gone, and you know where to find it. 2 more weeks passed. Alina waited for the right moment, watching Higgins, noting his growing emotional dependence on her. He shared his problems with her, his dissatisfaction with his marriage, his disappointment in his career, his feeling that life was passing him by. Alina was the perfect listener, creating the illusion of understanding and acceptance that he so desperately needed. Finally, she decided the time was right. They were in his office late at night, after most of the staff had gone home. Higgins locked the door as usual, and they made love right there on his desk. Risky, passionate, as if it were the last time. For him, it was the last time, though he didn't know it yet. Afterward, as they lay naked, Alina began the conversation she had been planning for weeks. You know, Robert, I never told you why I really ended up in prison. You said fraud, he replied, stroking her shoulder. That's the official version, she said, looking him in the eyes. But the real reason is deeper. I was trying to get revenge on the man who ruined my life. What are you talking about? Higgins tensed, sensing a change in her tone. There was a man in Alabama who was in a position of power. He raped me, and when I tried to get justice, he used his position to destroy me. Alina said calmly, as if telling an ordinary story. But the worst thing, I found out later he infected me with HIV. Higgins sat up abruptly, his face turning pale. What? I have HIV? Robert, she replied without looking away. I've had it for 5 years. Dr. Wilson knows. It's in my medical records, which you obviously didn't bother to read completely. You're lying. That's impossible. Higgins jumped to his feet, feverishly pulling on his clothes. Check my medical records. Alina replied calmly, not moving from her spot. Or get tested yourself, although I'm afraid it's too late. We had unprotected sex. How many times? 15? You did this on purpose. He couldn't finish the sentence. His face contorted with horror and rage. Yes, Robert. Alina finally sat up, looking at him with a cold smile. I infected you on purpose, just like they did to me. Now you know what it's like to have your life destroyed in an instant when the future you planned disappears. I'll kill you! Higgins lunged at her, grabbing her by the throat. Maybe, she croaked, not resisting. But think about it. What will happen if your wife finds out? Your children, your boss, the public. A prison warden who contracted HIV from an inmate he had an intimate relationship with, abusing his position of authority. Imagine the headlines. His grip loosened, and Alina continued. I have proof of our relationship, Robert. Letters, notes, details that only the two of us know. If anything happens to me, This information will be passed on to certain people." Higgins let her go and stepped back, his face a mixture of panic and despair. "What do you want?" "Nothing," Alina replied, starting to get dressed. "I already got what I wanted, justice." Higgins stared at her for a long time, his eyes filled with a mixture of hatred and fear. "You won't get out of here alive," he finally whispered. "Do you understand that?" "I knew it from the beginning," Alina replied calmly. "The only question is how many people you'll take with you. Kill me, and the evidence of our relationship will become public knowledge. Your wife, your children, your colleagues, everyone will find out. And there will also be information about who infected me in Alabama." A double blow. Higgins sat with his head down, his hands shaking. "You're a monster." "No, Robert." Alina stood up, ready to leave. "I'm just a product of what people like you have done to me. You created me." When she left the office, she knew that the next move would be his, and it would be the desperate move of a cornered man with nothing left to lose. For the next 3 days, Robert Higgins did not show up at the prison. According to the official version circulated among the staff, the warden had taken time off for family reasons, but Alina Carter knew the truth. She waited, preparing herself for the inevitable. Every morning, waking up on her prison bunk, she wondered, today or tomorrow? On the 4th day, Higgins returned. Alina noticed him from afar as she worked in the library. He looked completely different, his face gaunt, his eyes red, his movements nervous. He didn't even glance in her direction as he walked down the corridor, but she could feel the wave of hatred and despair emanating from him. "Welcome back, Mr. Higgins." One of the guards greeted him politely. "Is everything all right with your family?" "Yes, thank you," he replied curtly without stopping. That evening, Alina shared her observations with Maria. "He's back, and he looks like he hasn't slept in days. Do you realize that every day could be your last?" Maria looked at her intently. "I've always known that," Alina replied calmly. "From the moment I started this plan." "Are you really willing to die for revenge?" Maria's voice sounded incredulous. Alina was silent for a moment, staring at the cell wall. 5 years ago, when I found out about my diagnosis, my life was already over," she finally said. "All I have left is the chance to restore justice, and I'm going to use it, even if it costs me my life. Are you sure I can do my part?" Maria lowered her voice to a whisper. "Everything is ready." Alina leaned closer. "The package is hidden where I told you. Wait until I die. Then take it out and deliver it to the address I gave you." "Detective, Samantha Brooks will be interested in this case." "I'm sure. What if I don't make it? Or what if I get caught? Then it will all have been for nothing." "But I believe in you, Maria," Alina shrugged. "You're the only person I can trust." That night, Alina couldn't sleep for a long time. She thought about the path that had led her here, the decisions she had made, the life she could have had if not for that fateful evening in Alabama. But there were no regrets, only a cold determination to see it through to the end. The next morning, Alina went to her monthly appointment with Dr. Wilson. The prison doctor greeted her with obvious concern. "Miss Carter," he began quietly after the nurse had left the office. I need to ask you something directly. Did you tell Warden Higgins about your HIV status? Why are you asking? Alina looked at the doctor intently. Because he came to see me 3 days ago, Wilson said, nervously adjusting his glasses. He was in a state of panic, demanding to see your medical records and insisting on an immediate test for himself. And you showed him my records? Alina asked without reproach. He's the warden. He has access. The doctor looked guilty, but I conducted the test under the guise of a routine medical examination. The result is positive. Alina nodded silently, watching his reaction. You understand that he's dangerous now. Wilson continued. He's lost everything. His reputation, his family, his future. People like that are capable of desperate acts. I understand the risk, Doctor, Alina replied calmly. And I accept it. I could try to protect you, Wilson said sincerely. Transfer you to another colony under the pretext of specialized treatment. It's too late. Elena shook her head. But thank you for your concern. That evening, as the prisoners were returning from dinner, one of the guards approached Alina, a young man recently hired with a nervous look and sweaty palms. Carter, the boss wants to see you right now, he said, avoiding her gaze. Now. It's almost lights out. Maria, who was standing nearby, tensed up. Orders from the boss, the guard snapped. Let's go, Carter. Alina glanced quickly at Maria. Her eyes said goodbye, and reminded her of their agreement. Everything will be fine, she said to her cellmate. Even though they both knew it was a lie. The guard led Alina, not along the usual route to the administrative wing, but through a service corridor rarely used by prisoners. It was an alarming sign, but Alina walked calmly, as if unaware of the unusual nature of the situation. Where are we going? She asked as they passed another empty corridor. Shut up and walk, the guard replied gruffly, but there was fear in his voice. They stopped in front of a door leading to the back rooms. The guard quickly glanced around, then opened the door and pushed Alina inside. There, in the dim light of a single bulb, stood Robert Higgins. He was not alone. Next to him was his deputy, Mr. Davidson, a man with a reputation as a ruthless enforcer. Leave us, Higgins ordered the guard. He left the room with obvious relief, closing the door behind him. Alina looked around the room, old mops, buckets, cleaning supplies. A place where few people come, especially at this time of day. You've chosen an interesting place to meet, Mr. Higgins, she said calmly. Shut up, bitch! Davidson stepped forward, his face contorted with rage. You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into. No, let her speak. I want to hear what she has to say before she dies. So, this is the end. Elena smiled as if she had heard something funny. You're going to kill me in a back room. How cliché. You have a choice. Higgins took a step forward. His voice sounded almost calm, but his eyes were wild. Either you tell me right now where the evidence you mentioned is kept, and we'll make sure you die quickly. Or what? Alina interrupted him. You'll torture me right here in a prison full of witnesses. No one will look for a prisoner who hangs herself in her cell. Davidson said grimly. It happens, especially with those diagnosed with serious illnesses. Alina looked at Higgins. So, the official version is suicide. How predictable. Where's the evidence? "In a safe place," Alina replied. "And you'll never find it. A week after my death, it will be in the hands of people who will be very interested in getting to the bottom of this case. Kill me, and you'll be signing your own death warrant." "She's bluffing," Davidson said. "Let's just get this over with." Higgins kept his eyes fixed on Alina. "You ruined my life." Higgins's voice trembled with suppressed rage. "My wife took the kids and left when I told her about the diagnosis. My career is over. What else do you want from me?" "Justice," Alina replied simply. "You got what I got 5 years ago, and now the man from Alabama will get what he deserves too." "What man from Alabama?" Higgins looked confused. "The one who infected me." Alina looked him straight in the eye. "The one who got away with it because of his position. My evidence includes information about him too. Double retribution in one fell swoop. I've had enough of this shit." Davidson stepped forward with the rope in his hands. "Hold her, Robert." Higgins, as if coming out of a trance, grabbed Alina's arms. She didn't resist. There was no point. When Davidson threw the rope around her neck, she whispered, "This isn't the end, Robert. It's only the beginning." Early the next morning, Alina Carter's body was found in her cell. According to the official version released by the prison administration, the inmate had committed suicide by hanging herself with a sheet tied to the bars of the window. The reasons given were depression and a recent HIV diagnosis. Maria Lopez, Elena's cellmate, was one of the first to see the body. She screamed and fought hysterically as guards dragged her away from the cell. But by noon, she had calmed down remarkably. As if she had come to terms with the tragedy, she was sent to a prison psychologist who noted the prisoner's unusual composure in the face of such a shocking event. 2 days after Alina's death, a package was delivered to the office of Detective Samantha Brooks of the Palm Bay Major Crimes Unit. Inside was a thick envelope containing documents, photographs, and a flash drive. Samantha Brooks, a 38-year-old woman with a sharp mind and a reputation as an incorruptible investigator, looked through the contents of the envelope with growing astonishment. It was Alina Carter's diary, detailing her relationship with prison warden Robert Higgins, photographs of them together in the library and his office, recordings of conversations secretly made by Alina using a homemade device, and, most shocking of all, a detailed letter explaining her motives, including deliberately infecting Higgins with HIV and awaiting her own violent death. The last line of the letter read, "When you read this, I will be dead. Don't let them hide the truth." "What the hell is this?" Samantha muttered, putting the documents aside. She immediately contacted the district attorney, and an official investigation was launched that same day. Samantha's first step was to visit the Palm Bay Women's Correctional Facility under the pretext of a routine inspection. She requested a meeting with Robert Higgins, but it turned out that the warden had taken indefinite sick leave. Instead, Samantha was met by his deputy, Mr. Davidson, who was clearly nervous at the sight of the detective. "We are investigating the death of inmate Alina Carter," Samantha said, watching Davidson's reaction closely. "I need to talk to her cellmate, Maria Lopez. The coroner has already confirmed it was suicide." Davidson replied quickly, The inmate had been diagnosed with HIV, which is an obvious cause for depression. And yet, Samantha smiled coldly. "I would like to talk to Miss Lopez alone." Maria Lopez sat across from Samantha in the interrogation room, her face expressionless. But when the detective pulled out the envelope containing the evidence, the prisoner's eyes lit up with recognition. "Do you know what's in these documents, Miss Lopez?" "No," Maria replied, "but I know who sent them to you." "Ooh." "Me," Maria replied calmly. At Alina's request, over the next hour, Maria told Samantha everything she knew about Alina's plan, her relationship with Higgins, the deliberate infection, and how Alina had prepared for her own death, knowing that Higgins would not let her live after the truth came out. She deliberately provoked him into killing her. Samantha asked incredulously. She called it completing the circle. Maria replied, "Alina saw no future for herself. The only thing she wanted was for the people who had ruined her life to pay for it. And you helped her do that." Samantha looked at Maria intently. "I was the only person she trusted." Maria shrugged. "And yes, I believe she had a right to revenge. You don't know what she went through." The investigation was gaining momentum. Samantha obtained a warrant for the exhumation of Alina Carter's body. A new autopsy revealed signs of violence inconsistent with the suicide theory, in particular, injuries indicating that Alina had been strangled before being hanged to make it look like suicide. An order was issued for Robert Higgins's arrest, but he disappeared, leaving his home the day before the warrant was issued. His deputy, Davidson, faced with irrefutable evidence, broke down during questioning and confessed to complicity in Alina's murder, describing in detail the events of that night in the utility room. At the same time, following information from Alina's documents, Samantha began an investigation into Deputy Sheriff James Rodriguez of Alabama. It turned out that he was not the only victim of this man. Several other women had come forward with similar allegations, but all the cases had been hushed up thanks to his connections. After 3 weeks of intensive searching, Robert Higgins was found in a motel on the outskirts of Miami. He did not resist arrest, looking exhausted and indifferent to his fate. The only thing he said to the police was, "She won anyway." The trial of Higgins and Davidson attracted national attention. The story of Alina Carter, a woman who deliberately infected a prison warden with HIV as revenge for a broken life, then planned her own death in a way that would expose him, sparked heated debates about ethics, justice, and systemic problems in the prison system. Robert Higgins was sentenced to life in prison for first-degree murder and multiple counts of MICT in office. Davidson received 20 years as an accomplice. James Rodriguez of Alabama was arrested and charged with rape, intentional infection with a dangerous disease, and abuse of office. Dr. James Wilson, the prison doctor, testified about his attempts to intervene and prevent the tragedy. He resigned and devoted himself to working with HIV-positive patients at a clinic for the poor. Maria Lopez received a reduced sentence for cooperating with the investigation. After her release, she gave several interviews about her friendship with Alina and her role in the story before disappearing from public view. Samantha Brooks received a promotion for exposing the case. but it left a heavy mark on her. In a private conversation with a colleague, she admitted, "I don't know who the real victim was in this story. They all suffered from a system that refuses to protect the most vulnerable." Alina Carter's case led to a serious investigation into conditions and abuse conditions across the country. New protocols were adopted to prevent sexual contact between staff and inmates. Measures to protect HIV-positive inmates from discrimination were strengthened, and the system for reporting abuse of authority was improved. A small cemetery on the outskirts of Palm Bay became the final resting place for Alina Carter. A simple headstone, erected by an anonymous benefactor, bore only one phrase: "Justice has been served." The story of Alina Carter serves as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of abuse of power and the enduring human desire for justice. It exposes the systemic failures that can drive individuals to extreme measures and the importance of protecting the rights and dignity of all, regardless of their circumstances. We must learn from this tragedy and strive to create a society where justice is accessible to everyone, and where the vulnerable are protected from exploitation and harm. Here are some key takeaways: abuse of power. The story highlights the dangers of unchecked power, particularly in institutions like prisons. Systems must be in place to prevent and address abuse. Systemic failure. Alina's case reveals how systemic failures can drive people to desperate acts. We need to address the root causes of injustice. The complexity of justice is not always simple. Revenge, while understandable, can have devastating consequences. The importance of speaking out, even in the face of overwhelming odds, speaking truth to power, is essential. Patient confidentiality. The importance of medical ethics and patient confidentiality, and the fine line that medical professionals have to walk for the greater good. What do you think about Alina Carter's actions? Was she justified, or did she go too far? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this story compelling, be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more in-depth true crime stories. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching.